Yo, what's going on, Cowboys fans and just football fans in general? It's your boy Footsdaking as always. Thank you all for liking, sharing, and subscribing. You guys kind of know how we're moving the channel. We want to get you guys the top information, the top guest. And we had Lorin Cox on a while ago to kind of talk about Matt Eberflus, how his scheme will work. If you guys haven't watched that video, I'll put I'll put that link in the description box. I thought that Lorin did a great job of just breaking down who Matt Eberflus is, kind of dispelling what Matt Eberflus does and his schemes and stuff like that. But now we have a former Bear, and I think that Lorin Cox of Locked On Cowboys, I don't think there's anybody better to kind of talk about the truth of Jack Sanborn. But before we get to that, Lorin, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's been busy free agency for me, just like I think you guys were expecting a slower free agency, but I'm glad Jerry Jones finally got something going here.
You know what? Before we let the chat box kind of fill up, I've seen a lot in Bears world going on. Kind of break down for just the football fan, because a lot of people on this channel, they're just fans of football. So what's going on over there in Bears world? It looks like you guys, and I told my fellow followers and people that the Bears are going to try to build that front. What's going on over there?
Yeah, it's been a huge investment in the trenches, right? They make 2 trades for offensive linemen and then sign the top center on the free agent market in Drew Dahlman. And then they go out and get Grady Jarrett to bolster the interior of the defensive line. And they signed Dio Odengbo from the Indianapolis Colts to play the defensive end position. It's very much trying to build inside out to make Caleb Williams' job easier on the front end and try to make the rest of the defense's job easier by addressing really these two of the 2 biggest needs on their roster. And now they can go in the NFL draft feeling like anything is on the table with that first round pick.
Bro, I love what you guys are doing. I thought last year felt overkill. This is just from a Cowboys perspective. It felt overkill as far as the receiver position with bringing in Keenan Allen, who now Cowboys fans all of a sudden want Keenan Allen, and maybe we'll talk about that. And bringing in Keenan Allen and drafting Rome Odunze, but like literally completely forgetting about the offensive line. Is that where you are? Is that how you felt about last year? You know?
Yeah, a little bit. So they always try and go into the draft and through the offseason with the idea of like they're not going to force anything and they're going to kind of let the opportunities come to them. So they wanted to do more at the offensive line, but just where they were in the draft board and where kind of free agent prices ended up going, they ended up not really having the opportunities they would have liked. They said, well, receiver like Rome Odunze is there at 9. We're not just going to pass that up because maybe an offensive lineman is more of a need, because we got to think about 5 to 10 years into the future, not just what exactly this team needs right now. So I think that's going to be the approach again this year, where it's like they could take another offensive lineman in the draft after having, they could overdo it on that side of the ball in the first round just after spending so much money there, because it's about the long-term future. They're not just this year, or they could get a guy that might fit into more of an immediate need. We'll kind of see how it plays out.
I think too, I would much rather overdo it in the trenches versus like trying to get skilled players involved. I never was a big Shane Waldron fan. I actually, just from the outside looking in, I didn't like that marriage with Waldron. I never thought that marriage would be good, just because I didn't like Waldron when he was in Seattle. And it's clear, one and done. So I'm okay with what you guys are doing now. And I think that Ben Johnson understands, we got to have our trenches in order before we can even think about, going to eat dessert. We got to make sure we eat our vegetables. So I like that. So here's my thing, Lorin. We now signed Jack Sanborn. I remember covering him coming out of Wisconsin. And I got to tell you, I've just went down a complete deep dive, and it's not selling hopium to Cowboys fans, because the truth is he was let go for a reason. But I've also got a lot of like good reviews from people in the Bears community, the research that I've done. I loved him coming out of Wisconsin. Now he is limited from what I saw on tape, but the 2023 tape actually looked better than the 2024 tape. Now he played a lot more in 2023, but give us the rundown, the good, the bad, and take your time on just who Jack Sanborn is, because people want to know.
Yes, Sanborn came to the Bears as an undrafted free agent and was an instant fan favorite. This is the classic, training camp hero who comes into the preseason and makes some big plays and earns his way on the 53-man roster, albeit at a time when maybe there wasn't as much talent on the 53-man roster because they were still kind of tearing down in the early Eberflus and Ryan Poles years there. But nonetheless, like plays his way into the starting lineup as kind of sort of the Sam linebacker, where he's on the field in base defense when they got 3 linebackers on the field. But as soon as they go to nickel, he's someone they end up taking off the field because I think there's just some amount of athletic limitations there that, you don't love Sanborn one-on-one in coverage. If it's a slower tight end or something, he can keep up, but any kind of wide receiver or running back out of the backfield tends to be maybe a little bit more than he can keep up with. And so that's kind of what has limited his upside in Chicago. Like there's always been this feeling like maybe someday he could grow and develop into a, every down starting caliber player, but you just wonder if there's that pure physical limitation because the instincts make up for a lot of it, right? If you're a step ahead, you don't have to be as fast as the guy because how often are you running in a straight line on a 40-yard dash? Like that's not really the best measurement here. And so, that we've seen other slower linebackers like, even TJ Edwards in Chicago is not the fastest guy, but the instincts can kind of make up for it. So it felt like Sanborn was getting closer and closer to that. And yet, when the Bears put such a big investment in Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds in Chicago, there was never really a path for him into the starting lineup there. So it was a little bit of a surprise that they didn't tender him as a restricted free agent this year, but I think they didn't see him as worth the $3.2 million that the restricted free agent tender was going to be charging them. And they said, well, if you can find better opportunities or more money somewhere else this offseason, by all means go for it. And I think they just, ended up going different directions, not because they didn't like Sanborn, but just wasn't exactly where they were in the team building process.
Okay. Lorin, you just gave me the political answer. Now I want Lorin Cox's vibe on Jack Sanborn. I got you laughing. I want the truth because at the end of the day, I think you're right. Like Tremaine Edmonds, I remember him coming out. He gets drafted by the Bills, and has he played every snap for y'all? Like,
she's barely missed any time.
Him and Edwards. So was it a thing where it's just like these guys, there's money involved and they need to be on the field, or are they clearly better? And if they are, that's fine, because I do think that, Sanborn's a 4.73 guy. He's not a burner, but the tape is good. So what does Lorin Cox think about Jack Sanborn?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, Bears fans probably love Jack Sanborn a little bit more than he's a very good football player. He's going to have a long career. He's a core special teams player and someone who, when you have to throw him into the lineup, you're not super worried about it. You're not going to be screwed with Jack Sanborn out there, but I don't think he's ever going to be, an every down starting linebacker across the NFL. I just think, while he didn't have a lot of opportunities to do so here in Chicago, I still think even when there were injuries and stuff, and even when they get in the red zone, they'd bring in other linebackers sometimes. It wasn't like he was this great player that they just couldn't find playing time for all the time. It was like, well, there's some limitations there that they felt like he's a good player to have around, but not someone who's going to be an absolute game changer. And I think a big part of why he played less this season was less about his ability to perform, but more so they were a lot healthier at cornerback this year, and they wanted Kyler Gordon on the field as their slot quarterback. He had a great season, and so they played a lot more nickel and a lot less base defense, even against heavier personnel packages on offense. They'll keep their nickel package out there because they wanted all those corners on the field because they were playing well. So I think that was part of it too. It was just the talent overall on defense kind of kept him away. And I still think he'll have a long career, but not anything. I don't know if he's going to come to Dallas and emerge as this, this grand starter that the Bears really let get away. I think he'll be a solid player and a good value signing, but not necessarily this diamond in the rough home run.
Okay. Well, we're hoping for the home run, Lorin, but you just brought us back to reality, and that's why I brought you on here, because I knew that you would give us the truth. Now, deployment in Dallas looks different than a deployment in Chicago. Again, TJ Edwards, former first-round pick Tremaine Edmonds, very rangy backer. He's a really good athlete. We had Maris Louis-Fowl, and that's it, and Nick Vigil. It was explained. I heard somebody say he's probably an upgraded Nick Vigil, but you can probably upgrade even him in Sanborn, and I'm okay with that. I like him. The film that I watched, I like him as a Sam, and I don't really want him running all over the field, but he can do it. I don't like him as a weak, and I didn't. So it was interesting. I follow Cody Alexander, and he's a really good follow, matchquarters.com, and he does a lot of stuff when it talks about just defense and deployment. He actually said that it was weird. He was sneaky good in coverage, but he didn't have the traits to be great in coverage, but he was sneaky good in zones, getting to where he needed to be, stuff like that. But I say this to say in this room, in the Cowboys room, I think that he has value just because Maris is a second-year player. DeMarvin Overshown is clearly a better athlete than both, but he's hurt. And we don't know what we're going to get in the draft, and we don't want to be pigeonholed. Do you think for a year, for half a year, he can get you by as a starter, Lorin?
Oh, absolutely. And I think especially in Dallas, staying in Matt Eberflus's scheme, right? Where like you said, like he could just sit in some of those, middle of the field zone coverages where you're not asking to be the middle guy on cover 2 and really get super far back. But if he could just sort of sit in those hook curl zones, not as the middle linebacker, maybe not as the weak side linebacker, but on that strong side there. So you're keeping him away from slot receivers and maybe running backs breaking out into the flat there. You'll absolutely be fine with Jack Sanborn. You're not going to be out there thinking like, oh man, defenses identified him or offense identified him and they're targeting him over and over again. Like he can hold his own just fine. It's just a question of what the ceiling is there, but the
ceiling, the upside. Okay. So I guess I'll ask you this because fans want to know. We kind of hinted at it earlier, so we'll turn the page on Sanborn. I think that we did a good job of kind of just tapping it. I'll leave with this, and I want to ask you this because I know your time is valuable. You just got back or you're covering the Bears press conference, and I appreciate you squeezing this in, man. I really, really do, Lorin.
Absolutely.
Where are you with the Bears taking Genty? Because here's my thoughts. The Bears, if the best offensive lineman, it could be the Missouri kid. I don't know how you guys feel about guard. I know the Bears literally need to fix. You could throw a lineman at every position. But me and you were at the Senior Bowl. You're heavily vested in the Bears and in the draft community as well. I think that the Cowboys want Genty, but I think there's Bears fans and I'm pretty sure Bears people who cover the team to say this is the back for Ben Johnson. Where does Lorin Cox stand today? It's March 13th when it comes to the Bears draft and Ashton Genty.
At this point, I guess two things. One, I'm not confident he's going to be there for them to even
Raiders
the 10th overall pick. Like at the end of the day, that's probably the most likely outcome is that it's not even an option for them. But if he does get to that point, it's always going to be entirely dependent on who else is available. Because generally Ryan Poles has always prioritized really premium positions with his picks in the first 2 rounds. He takes offensive tackles like Darnell Wright. He takes defensive backs. He takes wide receivers. He takes quarterbacks, like the premium expensive positions. And we've never really seen him draft a running back any earlier than like the 5th or 6th round, like day 3. But Ben Johnson changes things a little bit. So that it's hard to like say with a lot of certainty or confidence. But I do think generally they look at this and say, we don't have to take Genty at this spot. So it's only if they get to 10 and Genty's there and, if Will Campbell's gone and Mason Graham is gone, if there's not a lineman they like on offense, if there's not a pass rusher they like at that point, then Genty, I think, is in the conversation. But I think they would rather get one of the top offensive or defensive linemen there if that's truly the best player available on their board. But if it's Genty, it's not out of the question. I just don't think he'll be there, and I don't think he'll be the best player available for them. I think they'd prefer a more premium position than running back. That obviously it still is valuable, but push comes to shove, I think they'd rather go trenches there if they can.
I think what's happened now is there's a real world where the Titans are locked into Cam Ward. That's what I'm hearing buzz-wise. And I don't know if Shedeur Sanders, with Cleveland still in the market for a quarterback. I mean, they did sign Kenny Pickett, but I'm hearing that Russell Wilson is taking a visit there. I don't know if Shedeur is a lock there. If another quarterback doesn't get into the first round, it's going to be hard to push Genty because I don't think that. Well, we know that the Raiders aren't taking a quarterback. They just traded for Geno Smith, and they have real hope in Geno Smith. So they could. Here's the thing with the Raiders. I think the Raiders could go Tet, or I think they could go Genty. I know that they need a true number 1, but with Brock Bowers, maybe they say, you know what, he's our guy, and we'll just run the ball because they actually have a decent O-line. I think the Bears is interesting because if Will Campbell falls, it would be hard to pass on because the Bears O-line was unwatchable. The Bears in Houston's O-line was unwatchable. I think everybody has a lot of blame and issues with Caleb. It was unwatchable. Now, Caleb needs to reel it in, and I think that's why you hired Ben Johnson. But he was there. Your guys' O-line play was unwatchable. And I think that if you clean that up, that's what would make sense. But I mean, you could say the run game helps as well. So, it's interesting.
I think they only take Will Campbell if they truly view him as an offensive tackle. I just don't think they're at 10 that moves inside to guard because of everything they just invested in their guards, and also like using that, like if they're going to draft an offensive lineman in the first round, it's got to be somebody who's competing to start at left tackle this season. I don't think they want to take a lineman there who is likely going to sit on the bench for pretty much the entire rookie season unless they have injuries with the guys inside. So somebody like Armand Membo from Missouri or
the Missouri kid
could be in that conversation there. And I think defensive line is the same conversation with Mike Green or James Pierce or Mike Hill Williams or even Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. Like it's hard to predict. Every team's going to have those guys ranked differently. So the Bears might really love one of those guys that other teams don't. And they just say, oh, we're taking with 10 and be really happy. But we'll see. A lot up in the air there.
Yeah, because edge outside of Montez Sweat is a need for you guys, correct?
Yeah, they just signed Dio Odengbo from the Colts, but they still need more. Like they talk about being able to kick him inside. If you kick him inside, somebody else has to play defensive end, and they definitely are going to take a pass rusher early in this draft at some point. And then I think they're going to take offensive linemen on day 2 as well. So, but they'd be happy to do it on day 1 if the right prospect's there for them.
Okay. Lorin Cox of Locked On Bears, buddy. Thank you so much. Just a quick hitter, and we got through a lot of content. We got through Ashton Jeanty possibly being a Dallas Cowboy, said Lorin Cox because the Bears are going to pass on him. So if Lorin said it, it's true, guys. So Cowboys fans, you heard that here first. The Bears are not drafting Jeanty. No. In all seriousness, though, Lorin, since we've met at the Senior Bowl, it's been none but love, and I really appreciate you. So thank you, man.
Of course. Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
All right, bro. Peace. Hey, man, that's